Welcome to my read reading to be read for January 2025. We're kicking off the year strong with a couple of tomes, wrapping up a few series, and overall I am very pleased with the quality of the reading I've been doing lately. I am in the middle of this book right here, which I will talk more on later. But this is the reason I haven't finished a lot of books since my last update. I've been mostly reading that. I'm approaching like 40% through. Despite having that tome going, I did manage to read 3 other books. 2 were pretty good and 1 was a dud. But in the pretty good category, finished up the Siege trilogy by KJ Parker. This is a practical guide to conquering the world. The first book was the best one, but I enjoyed these companion books enough that I would recommend the entire thing. There were some really cool writing things he did, and I think my favorite part is how he tied very subtly these books in with the first book. Like, half the fun is figuring out how it weaves into the story as a whole. I have heard criticism that the 3 perspectives sounded very similar, and I don't disagree with that. I think if you do the audio version, the guy doesn't do any distinctions between each of the novels that he reads, but it's so good. Like, it's such cheeky humor. To me, it feels like 3 entire books with a Glockta character, so I'm all there for that. The repetition didn't bother me, and I thought the storylines were different enough that even though the voice remained the same, but it's a chronicling thing, and it's like an alternate written history thing, and so it's very possible that it was told by the same person with the same voice, kind of creating these alternate histories for this world. So it gets a pass in my book because I think it was intentional. But either way, this one, liked it just as much as the second book. I think I'm coming in at a 4 out of 5 stars. This might have gotten a little bit lower than that, but it made me laugh so many times that automatically that bumps it up at least half a star. I don't know what kind of time I'm going to have this year, but I would really like to read a few more KJ Parker. I am grateful for the Library of Alexandria for putting it on my radar. Getting back to ranking the books that I read as I talk about them in my wrap-up, number 1 spot. As there are only 3, this is going to be not as riveting as it could be. For a project, I read Charon's Claw by R.A. Salvatore. This is book whatever in the Drit series, between 20 and 30. Some lists have it lower, like 22. Others have it higher, like 25. I'm kind of going with the higher list, so I think it's book 25. And I did not enjoy this one at all. In fact, I didn't enjoy the one before it, or the one before that. Basically all the ones in this quartet. And I've got specific reasons for not liking it. Like, way too much time on all this other crap that feels like a waste of time for me. And not enough time progressing the plot of basically why I'm following the series still at this point. I don't like it. But I wanted to give it a good go, because I either abandon the series now and sell all of the books that I haven't read yet, or I push through and I figure out a reason to keep coming back. And for me, what little there was in here of the main character and his story progression was enough to keep me coming back. And because I wanted to find that connection to it, I read it especially slowly at the beginning when he introduced like a couple of dozen villains within the prologue. So right there, I feel like I'm doing homework trying to figure out who's who so that I can follow the rest of the story. I ended up landing at a 2 out of 5 star, lowest book I read. And then because I needed something lighthearted to break up all of the dreariness with Dritz and all of the lengthy dialogue in Wind and Truth, I read Happy Place. This is one of 2 Emily Henrys I hadn't gotten around to yet, and this will be my 3rd read from her, 4th. My least favorite so far, because I couldn't find a connection to the characters or the storyline. I couldn't relate to the main character in any way, shape, or form. And on top of that, I really didn't like the love interest. And the relationship that she had with her friends was great. I wish it had spent a little more time on that because I thought that's where kind of some of the magic of the story was. But all that said, this is the funniest one that I've read so far. And I laughed out loud a few times. And I actually think that the side characters in this one are ones that I will remember more than the side characters from the other ones. So it's a mixed bag. And I spent the whole book thinking that it was going in a particular direction. Glad to say that it didn't because I would have been disappointed. Emily Henry always has that touch where she knows what would annoy readers and takes these common tropes and turns them on their head and makes them actually worth reading. That's why I love her so much. I'm sad that I only have 1 to go after this before I'm caught up. But I think Given how highly I rated the other ones, this one's probably coming in at a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I'm really glad for the time I spent with it, but it's not as highly rated as the other ones. So, there you have it, my pitiful ranking of everything I read this month, and this was easily the top book. Now we get to my currently reading section. Wind and Truth. Actually, I don't know, moving along, getting closer to halfway. I decided to put everything else down that I had picked up. I started like 6 books and ended up unstarting them, marking them as I'm not reading this anymore in Goodreads, just so that I could focus on this one and maybe try to make some like meaningful progress with it. It's heavy, which I need to take a moment to highlight that. I started like 6 or 7 books and found myself in the exact same situation that if you've been following my channel, you know I'm trying not to do. I'm trying not to have more than 1 or 2 things going at a time. And so one thing leads to another, and I want to join a buddy read, and I pick another book for the challenge that I want to pick up right away. No bueno. But instead of trying to dig myself out of a hole, I just like arbitrarily decided to not unstart them. Like, I'll just mark it as not started. And there we go. I can focus again. It's amazing how simple that is compared to what I've tried to do in the past. But trying to read the longest book Sanderson has ever written in a time where I am trying to be more patient and to sit with books and to not hurry to the next thing and to really cherish the experience that I'm having with it. Like, not a good combination. Couldn't I start this and cherish the experience with like a 300-page book? So it's not surprising to me that I got anxious and started a few other things, but at least I reined it back in. I'm in line with my intentions, and that's all that matters. But Wind and Truth, it's a great book. I'm enjoying it thoroughly. Really front-loaded with a lot of great stuff. Things that as a fan I'm like, oh. And then I'm in the middle where I feel it's more like a lull before the storm. Now, I get it. You probably are so sick of hearing about this book because it's already been out for over a month, and I'm sure it's been covered on literally every channel of someone who is even remotely interested in the Stormlight Archive. So I will leave it at that. I'm enjoying it. I'll see you in April when I actually finish it, because I was struggling so hard with that Dritz book and was afraid that if I didn't keep going, that eventually I would just end up unhauling the whole series that I've invested so much time in. Like, Dritz is a major part of my childhood, my reading experience, one of the social aspects of reading. It's the first book that a friend handed me and said, I really think you'd like this, and then we had kind of a bond over it. So really love this series. Decided, because I had invested so much time with all of those random villains trying to remember who was who, that it was worth the effort to continue on right away. And to my absolute delight, this is so much better. So much better. It's like 75% Dritz and his posse and like 25% left over for everybody else, which I think is the balance it needed. It's a lot more engaging. It's a lot more introspective. It feels like we're not wasting time anymore. It's kind of got a little bit of a setting shift. This is great. This is I found myself putting down Wind and Truth because this is my project book, right? It's the one I'm reading before bed. I found myself putting down Wind and Truth in the middle of the day just to see what's going to happen next to Dritz. I love it. Thank goodness I've got something keeping me back to the series. About halfway through that one, I imagine I'll have it read by my next update. With my patrons, we are reading Starter Villain by John Scalzi. I'm a huge John Scalzi fan. I love some of the things that he's done. The Kaiju Preservation Society was so much fun. And then Old Man's War, at least that first book, like, he's kind of got like fluffy sci-fi, but it's fluffy with a little bit of substance, so you don't feel like you're wasting time when you're reading them. Although sometimes the fluffy read is exactly what you need in the time, but you get what I'm saying. Like, it's not a robust science fiction. I hated Red Shirts. I read that one recently. This one, so far, about halfway through, is tied with Red Shirts as the worst Scalzi that I've read. I do not like this book. I like this book better than Red Shirts marginally because I really like the cats. But this guy, like, every couple of pages is like, oh, no, it's so overdramatic, so overdone. And of course, I'm doing the audiobook, so it's just Will Wheaton yelling at you for the entire book as this guy is, like, irate about things and incredulous about that. And I got to the part with the dolphins and I almost put it down. It's so stupid. Another problem is pacing. So halfway through the book, I don't even know really what's going on yet, and I should know, right? At least the inciting incident has happened, but Like, I kind of, like, how much patience am I supposed to give, especially since I'm not enjoying the journey? So my patrons have finished it. They say it gets better, but I strongly considering a DNF right now. I'm not sure if I want to throw in the towel or not, but I'm looking at another like 4 hours on the audiobook going, I don't know if I can do this. He's testing my patience. And I've really loved a lot of Scalzi stuff. The Lock-In series was good too. Collapsing Empire, really love those. It's got all of those elements that he's putting into this book, but without the substance, and it's too much. It's overdone. Self-indulgent, that's the word. But on the complete flip side, I am also reading Meditations with Mortals by Oliver Burkeman. This is one of my absolute gurus. Him and Cal Newport, man, I could listen to them talk for eons about their philosophies. And I loved 4,000 Weeks by this author. That is a book that for sure has changed my life. But like, it's kind of philosophy for most of the book, and then you get like a little section at the back that's like a 10-point practical application. So my friend and I have spent hours and hours trying to interpret what some of his philosophies mean and try to figure out how to apply them to our own lives. And it's been awesome discussion, but here we now have this book that's a 28-day program. I use the term very loosely, where the practical application is all the book is. And the idea is you start on day one and kind of sit with what he says, like a meditation. Yeah, sit with the meditation for the whole day and see how you can apply it to your life, and it kind of elevates up. You graduate to week 2, then you graduate to week 3. And I've done it earnestly, one a day, which has been really difficult because I just want to eat it all up. But I am loving this one. Highly, highly recommend. Like, if you don't want to read 4,000 Weeks, I think that is a colossal shame. But just do a TED Talk with him or something, or his interview with Ali Abdaal, just to see what he's about, and then dive into this Meditations for Mortals. The basic crux of it is that our time is finite. You're never going to get through your to-do lists, so that kind of frees you up to focus on the things that matters most. I love it so hard. And then we get into our to-be-read section. First up, in about a week and a half, I have a buddy read for the new Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros. It's the 3rd book in the 4th Wing series. I always want to say 5th Wing. The dragons in that first book were so delightful, and the sense of wonder and discovery made me feel like a kid again reading the books. And I like the academic setting. That to me is the draw to the story. Got away from that a little bit in the 2nd book, but I feel like as a story it was written better, so more composed, but there weren't enough dragons in that book. So I'm hoping that we come back home to what made me really enjoy the series to begin with, and more dragon involvement. There were times in the 2nd book where you kind of even forgot she had a dragon. So I'm really hoping to get some satisfaction out of this one in that regard. I'm not sure I'm crazy about the direction that I think it's going, but I mean, you know, you gotta perpetuate the plot somehow when you're massively successful and looking at a bigger book deal than you thought you'd have originally. So I won't knock it, but we'll see how it goes. And then also, I've been itching. How many times have I held these things up? This is the 7 Sword series by Anthony Ryan. I don't have book 1, but they're little novellas. And they were so cool. I read the first 3 over the course of 3 years, and I'm like, that's too much time. I cannot wait a whole year to come back to like 150 pages and remember what happened. So I want to start from the beginning and give this an earnest go. I don't think the series is complete yet, but I don't care. Like, I really want to dive into this. I loved what I read so far. I like the journey aspect of it. I like the main characters. There's some zombies and some really cool world building. It's one of those books where you read it and your mind immediately expands. Like, you feel like you're on this epic scale adventure and the world feels huge. Malazan has done that for me to a degree. So I don't know. I'm not saying it's like Malazan, but if you like some of the vibes from that, you'll probably appreciate the world building in this one. And just cool concepts. I love Anthony Ryan anyway. He's responsible for Waking Fire, part of the Draconius Memoria trilogy, which is about dragons. All-time favorite. Love him so much. Can't wait to get to these. And that's why I'm like itching to get through other books, which is so funny to me because I guarantee you, based on the habits I've nurtured within myself, that as soon as I pick these up, I will be itching to get to something else. I don't know how to fix that problem yet. I'm hoping to discover more about that as I percolate on it throughout 2025. The grass is always greener. We're always anxious to read the next thing. We're always in a hurry to finish what we're currently reading so we can pick up something else. I need to practice patience. And last but not least, I would really like to wrap up the Combat Code series by Alexander Darwin. This is book 3, Blacklight Born. And the first book and I had a major experience about a year ago. One of my favorite things I've ever read. I feel like it was written specifically for me. I was so delighted at everything in that book. Training sequences, awesome characters, cool settings, fight scenes, like duels, in-arena duels. Anything with a iota of competition, essentially. But it was just done so well, I loved it. The second book expanded a little bit. It added more characters, and I felt like it lost the personal connection to the characters that we started with. So I didn't like that it went broader, but it still had a lot of really good training and fight scenes. So we'll see where this one goes. I wish this had been out when I'd read those first two because I think I would have already devoured it. I'm a little worried that the momentum is gone, but I'm excited to get into it. All right, let's talk about my 3-for-1 challenge that I've been tracking since August. My last update, I didn't have my paper with me. I didn't know what the number was. I took time before filming this to figure out where I was with it. Like, how badly did my Cyber Monday purchase of all of those audiobooks throw me back with my goals? So August 4th, I had 285 unread Audible titles in my library that I spent hard cash on. I have been reading quite a few from my Audible library and being very intentional with the exception of that one multi-book purchase. And even with that, my total starting today, essentially the beginning of 2025, is 291. We're going the wrong direction. There are years where if you took the same time range from like August to January, that I would have added 60 to 100 new titles to my library. So the fact that the swing was only 6 books, I'm okay with that, but it also re-solidified my intention to reduce my consumption and to spend more time on the things that I spent a lot of money on. And actually this time, usually I would pick up like 10 books in a series that I plan on reading eventually just because they're on sale. I only did that with one series. It was a trilogy. For the most part, I bought nonfiction, which to me are like candy. I don't know necessarily that I count them against myself at this point because of the rate at which I am consuming them, but still. But going forward, see, I've been doing this 3-for-1 tracking where every 3 books that I finish from my Audible library, I get to purchase one. I don't think that's serving me necessarily because I don't want to purchase another book for every 3 that I read. I want to just reduce that overall number. So I'm going to get a new tracker created in my book journal for the year and just keep track of where that number is. 191. Within the next couple of months, I would like to have that down to the 285 number that I started with. And like, let's throw out a goal. By the end of the year, I would like to be at like 250. That seems reasonable to me. That's like 35 titles commitment. And I know I'm going to be reading a lot of new releases. I don't count it against myself when I purchase a book to read it immediately, because that's supporting my reading life. Hoarding audiobooks that really have no value to me and honestly might disappear before I have a chance to get around to them, that's not a part of my value system. So let's keep that as a loose goal. But officially, starting at 291, let's see what it looks like by the end of next month. I have a few going right now. In fact, both of the things that I'm reading plus Meditations for Mortals are from my Audible collection. So there's 3 right there. Thanks so much for joining me on this one. Happy New Year, everybody. I feel like the last several months have been so busy and weird that the turning of the year just felt like one more thing to manage because like at work, you gotta change out all the files. At home, you gotta do like the year-end backing up of things and clearing the docs so that you can start the new year with like a clean slate. I feel like I haven't really started to enjoy the fact that it's a new year yet, but ever so slightly I'm getting into the spirit. Anyway, let me know how your holiday season went and what fun books you got up to. Hopefully you had some time off work unless you work retail, like bless your souls. Thanks so much for tuning in and I will catch you on the next one. Bye.